Hi Jen, how are you going today?
Well, thanks, Kate. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for coming in today, which is Friday the 17th of July, to complete this assessment with me today. Thank you also for agreeing to be on the film here. I'll just reiterate that this is for my professional development and review and assessment only. It won't be used for any other screenings or reasons. And I'll just reiterate for the tape that my name is Kate Horweg and I am with Training Solutions, and I am here to finalise your assessment for this unit today. Once again, I'm just going to go through a fair bit of the pre-briefing stuff to clarify that all for the camera and to make sure that we're all on the same page. Although today we've already been here and been through your first assessment. So I'll just set the scene. You are working here as the administrative assistant at Queanbeyan High School, and you are time sharing this position with Liz Burton. I conducted Liz's assessments on Monday, yours being done Friday, on the respective days which you work. And you obviously have a lot of previous experience because you've only been in this role for a short time, so you can draw on that experience as well for this recognition of prior learning application assessment today. Just briefly too, Jilly Archer is the school administrative manager. She's also the office warden here, so if we identify any risks or hazards today while we're doing this assessment or in relation to this assessment, we'll just let her know, either straight away or as soon as possible afterwards. If we hear the fire alarm and emergency bell ring or evacuation bell ring, we just slip out this side door here and into the courtyard. You can see the assembly area over there marked quite clearly. That's great. So we're here in your workspace at Queanbeyan High School using your specific ergonomic chair as you've selected and mentioned before. Today you have presented and we've reviewed your portfolio of evidence, which is the first assessment item for this class, which is great. You were found to be compliant with that and you have satisfied all the requirements for that, and you were deemed to be competent and were granted recognition of prior learning for that section of this assessment. So this today now is the final assessment towards your unit of competency BSB CMM 201, Communicate in the Workplace, Recognition of Prior Learning Application. So yeah, congratulations on passing that. I'm sure this one will whiz through with flying colours as well. I'm only going to ask you 3 questions to assess your knowledge using the oral questionnaire assessment instrument, which you received a copy of before, obviously without the benchmark marking guide, which I will work through when I assess your responses today to make sure that they meet all of the requirements for that unit of competency and your role here at Queanbeyan High School. And all the information that we confirmed at the pre-assessment briefing is still valid. So the assessment plan we signed off last week still applies. There have been no changes to be made and nothing has been varied from that last document. I've also given you a bit of time to prepare for this assessment, 15 minutes to collate your thoughts. I see you've got some great handwritten notes, and maybe just read those lists out as we go along. That'd be great. You can also refer to, if you need, any documents in your portfolio of evidence as well. Anything you need to submit to support your response here. So please make sure that you answer every question completely. If there are multiple sections to that question, I will ask them separately. If you answer most of it, but there's one part missing, well then I'll tease that information from you with a little bit of additional questioning. Okay. So I'm here to support you, you know, we'll work through this together. As I say, you'll need to provide answers which cover the unit of competency and your organisational requirements here to achieve a satisfactory result in this questionnaire, but we can go through that. You don't need any reasonable adjustments or any other special conditions, so we're good to go. Are you good to go? Are you ready?
Good to go.
Good to go, righto. Also, I'll just let you know you'll be given enough time to answer all the questions. I'll be writing notes as we go along because that will help me to assess your responses in relation to that, and I have some guides here which I'll just tick and flick. All right, so let's go. Could you please identify some organisational policies and plans that you've worked for detailing workplace communication standards at your place of work?
Okay. Well, in my previous place of work, we had a very well set out procedures that were always available to us in the administration policies and the workplace safety policies.
Yep.
In my previous employment as a manager in a training store,
Oh, right. Yep.
I would have to convey that information and make sure that all of the staff, who were which mainly teenage youth.
This was a pizza training store,
Yes.
wasn't it? Yeah, right.
Yes.
That's in your portfolio of evidence. I think that would have been an interesting job. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting is one way to describe it. So we had lots of communication requirements in that position.
I can imagine.
Yeah, because you had to make sure that I received the information correctly from the head office as the corporate store manager, but also I had to make sure that the staff were aware of it, and we would do that through training sessions or little handouts that we'd send out to each of them, and we'd also have training meetings within the store.
Yep.
Because of the type of work we were doing, communication was one of the most important things, because you had to get the orders right, and if you didn't get the orders right, that meant for unhappy customers. So training was in different forms. I would train them in different ways of communicating, which would be over the front counter, telephone, and then when the delivery drivers were delivering, they would then have to communicate what it was that they were delivering and how much it was. So there was lots of communication, different ways that we would do things, whether it be written down or verbally passed on.
Okay, so that's really a very good comprehensive answer. Have you, in that role or in any other role, had to deal with, say, sensitive communications or anything which relates to maybe privacy or confidentiality?
Yeah, well, we also had rosters.
Oh, yes.
Which I would put together and then send out. It was important that these were sent out as individual rosters, not sent to everybody. It was all sent to everybody, but people's information wasn't, their email information and things like that weren't attached. But because of the type of work we were doing, that people did need to know when other people were working, so you couldn't keep that all secret. But keeping their private email information was important.
Yeah. Okay. So their personal details.
Their personal
and things
details.
like that.
Yes.
And their phone number or their
their
email address. Yep. Okay. Yep. That's pretty good. I think that covers off on the privacy kind of stuff. I can imagine you had a bit of bullying in the workplace as well.
Unfortunately, there was always different types of bullying happening.
Conflict negotiation.
Yes. I would try and nip it in the bud as soon as I was aware of it by taking the person aside and privately having a conversation with them about what was happening, and that I was aware of what was happening, and that I wasn't going to tolerate it. And depending on their reaction would be what happened.
Progressed along from there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we've been through sufficient different types of policies here to completely sign off on that.
Yes, because a lot of that stuff is relevant within this new position.
Yeah. Okay.
The bullying part, I can only communicate and follow the procedures of that.
Yes.
But in my previous manager's role, it was my responsibility.
Yeah.
There's other people here to do that.
that's a very good delineation, because obviously you have to work within your role context. So that's really,
Yeah.
I'll write that down here as well, because that states you clearly understand your organisational requirements, but then you also understand that from a different perspective of what has to happen in relation to the policy.
Yeah.
So that's great. Yeah, thank you. Role specific. Wonderful. I think that has covered that first question quite comprehensively. So in that answer too, for the second question is, please describe some different styles of communication, different communication styles, and where it is appropriate to use those.
Mm-hmm.
So you almost covered all of those answers in your first answer.
Yeah.
And that was phone. Could you just maybe expand as to when you might use phone communication?
Well, the main one was taking orders for the business.
Yep.
We would have a script that the
Yes,
staff would have to follow,
Yep.
and quite often head office would ring up as a secret shopper
Oh wow, as
to
a
test. And if they failed, he would just say, "This is not an order. You have failed."
Well,
They were that direct.
that's pretty clear communication in itself, isn't it? All right.
Yes.
So, and those scripts were developed by your supervisors or whatever,
the head
managers.
office, yes.
And I should imagine there is a similar process here. Have you got guidelines for dealing with that in your new role?
Yeah, there are guidelines, and it's a little bit different because you're not asking for an order.
Yeah.
You're just asking how I can help.
Yeah. Whatever.
Taking notes, making sure you've got the information right. If the person's not available, make sure you get their phone number and repeat it back to them so that
that's very good. That's a very good skill to
make sure
remember.
that you've got it right, so that when the person goes to ring back, that they've got the right person.
Yeah, excellent. You also mentioned over-the-counter and face-to-face communications. In this role here, you do some of that too?
Yeah, we have people come in making inquiries at the office. If I'm able to give them direction as if that's what they're wanting, or answer the question, okay, I'll do. But otherwise, I will communicate to them that the person's not available, but I would contact them to make them aware that you're looking for them.
Yeah. All right. So pass on anything.
Pass on any relevant detail.
And the face-to-face communications with customers directly.
Yeah, with in the previous role, that was over the counter, face-to-face.
Yes, right.
Yeah, and which is similar here, except that I'm not going to provide them a pizza.
And I see also you mentioned you have face-to-face communication if you are dealing with somebody and something that's been identified as inappropriate in their case. In your case, as you also said in the last answer, that's not your role here, and you would report it on to
the relevant person or to the person in charge. Jilly. Yeah.
All right, that's great. So that shows that, and we need a third example. This question requires specifically 3 examples of another different type of communication that you might use. I see you have some notes here regarding written communication. Do you have any examples where you have used written communication as the preferred method? Like if you rather than ringing someone up, when is it better to send an email or a letter?
Yeah.
Can you think of
well,
an
in
example?
my previous role in the pizza store, if sometimes we would have a complaint, which might come into the store when I'm not there.
Yeah.
So I would then try and call them. But if they weren't available on the phone, I would immediately email them,
So
making them aware
that
I was aware of their complaint and that I was keen to talk to them about it and make amends. Yeah. And here,
I suppose if you get email responses, you tend to respond
back with emails. Yeah. But again, in the previous thing, we had a lot of reports to fill in.
Reports.
So we would have to do daily reports and convey them to the administrators.
Yep.
So that would be a similar thing here. Should something happen, I would fill in, if there was an accident or something, or someone got hurt, slipped over and hurt themselves, I would fill in the relevant report.
Yep.
And make sure that it was passed on to Gillian, and for her to follow it up.
Well, yeah, okay, great, yeah. So you're aware of that system here, and you clearly have understanding of when it might be best to employ that. They're really good examples that you've provided here, and we've definitely covered off on 3 points with examples. So that's covered all the relevant. Thank you. We sort of worked through that a little bit. That was great. So can you think of any possible barriers to communicating effectively with someone else, and maybe some strategies that you've used to help you in the past to deal with those barriers and to improve communication?
When we're a multicultural school here, so we have a number of different languages, and quite often the parents have only got that language. They don't have English as a second language, but the children might.
Yeah.
So if that would happen, I would try and get as much information from the parents, so that they might need to speak to their child and I find out from them, as much as I can through their non-English.
Yeah. Do you have any common languages here? Maybe you have, say, do you have any marketing or any forms in foreign language? I know there are a lot of Chinese students here, or
we do have
translate
little handout sheet things that written, if I can
ascertain what it is.
ascertain what their language is. Although we do have lists where they're set in more than one language.
Yeah.
So I just pass that on to them so that they can tell me what language they're looking for.
Yep.
I will then find the person that can communicate with them.
Yeah, excellent.
Or I might be aware of who the student is. It may just be the one student that comes from Turkey, and I may know who that person is.
Yeah, right.
And I will contact the teacher.
Excellent. That's cool. And I'm sure, like, if you need a translator or something, Jilly will organise that anyway. That's outside the scope of your role here. So you can just hand that on. All right. Can you think of maybe, I see you have a couple of other ones here. Would you like to outline, maybe even just say what some of the barriers are?
Well, hearing difficulties is another one.
Yep.
From personal experience, I find it's very, very important that you speak slowly and clearly.
Yeah.
Facing the person so that person is able to see your lips.
And you say that from personal experience, because I see you've got your little hearing aids on today, so that's wonderful. Yeah.
And face the person, that's very important. Not answer their question by turning there and look for a piece of paper and answering the piece of paper because they're over there and not here.
That's a really good strategy. Lip reading is a big thing, isn't it?
It's an important thing.
Yes, excellent. And possibly one more case study or one more example, maybe?
Yes, well, I haven't had the experience here but there could be people with vision impairment. And I normally would say just follow the corridor down 3 doors and turn to the right. But if they're unaware of that, I would have to make sure that I get some support from Jilly probably, and ask her if it's okay for her or somebody else to guide them down there, guide them to where they need to go.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
And I also saw in your on the table over there before, there was something which was printed in rather large lettering, so I wondered if that was also something for her. I see you've written vision impairment down there, so hence the thing. Excellent. I think that also indicates that at least you're aware of different ways and different strategies to perhaps overcome any challenges you face.
Yes. Also with the hearing one, you could quite often writing a note.
So written, and in that case you would obviously write that rather than ring them on the phone or something.
Yeah.
And that's great. I guess people don't send an email saying don't ring me because I can't hear you, but that'll be, yeah. So you've indicated that you've got at least an awareness of how, and given your previous experience in a managerial role, you know, and now you are in far narrower parameters, you obviously have the understanding of how to employ different techniques to improve your effective communication. Okay, so you're looking through our marking guide. You have provided sufficient number of different documents relating to policies, procedures and plans for organisational communications. So we looked at pizza shop, we looked at currently here at the Queanbeyan High School and different parts of your pizza administration and communication, sorry. For question 2, different types of communication, you've clearly outlined at least 3 as per the marking guide, but that's what it was required, and you've got really clear understanding of where that might be a better approach to a different communication style. So I think that's all. Broke my pencil, but that is all covered off there. And for the third and final question, you've given some really good strategy examples of how to deal with different communication barriers and the way in which you might approach dealing with those, and the support mechanisms, i.e. Jilly and the other administrative staff here to help you.
Yes. So
using that guide, I can see that your evidence provided in this tool meets the rules of evidence in that it is valid, and that is reiterated by the appendix about the assessment mapping matrix, which links these questions back to the unit of competence particular criterion. So that's covered off that as being that. It's reliable evidence. I can verify we've got your portfolio of evidence here. With the pizza shop, you've provided clear examples of that, but it's verifiable in that way as reliable. This is a flexible program which has been done to suit you, and it's fair because we have provided you with extra time and any other reasonable adjustments which we didn't need to, but we have considered that in the development of this package. The evidence you have provided meets the rules of evidence because it's current. A lot of the stuff you've talked about is here or in your previous employment, and it's still relevant to these policies. I like how you related your previous experience back to different things which you do now in your role and how that response varies from being a manager to being an administrative assistant. That's wonderful. It's sufficient in that you have ticked off all of the different aspects of those answers required by the unit of competency details and also by your organisational requirements. And it's authentic because I've spoken to you about this and I can see that you have provided me with these answers and they're about experiences which you are familiar with. So at the end of all of that, congratulations. You have answered all of these questions with sufficient detail and appropriate examples for me to judge that your knowledge is sufficiently demonstrated and assess you as competent for this assessment instrument. Given that we've also done the portfolio of evidence that you've provided as the first assessment, this is the second assessment, you are now deemed fully competent in BSB CMM 201 Communicate in the Workplace Unit of Competency. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I don't imagine you'll be appealing this decision because you have passed. So I don't think you'll need to send me anything in writing within 28 days. I will send through your statement of attainment to you via email within 7 days. Realistically, it'll probably be Monday. You'll have it by Monday anyway. And I will send a copy of your statement of attainment and these completed assessment documents and your portfolio of evidence, if you don't mind, through to Jilly to keep on your personal file and your training records. And then also we'll keep this documentation which you have submitted at Training Solutions in accordance with our policies and procedures. Thank you so very much for taking part in this assessment today and for allowing me to film it for professional development purposes. Do you have any further questions at this point?
No, thank you.
No? Wonderful.
You've been very easy to deal with, very relaxed.
Good. That's great. I'm so glad to hear, and thank you so much. All the very best with your new job here at Queanbeyan High School.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. See you, Jen.